All right, you ready to take a deep dive? Today, we're all about cybersecurity.
Ooh, cybersecurity. Sounds exciting.
It is, especially when we're talking about CrowdStrike.
CrowdStrike, yeah, they're a big deal, right?
Huge. They're leading the charge when it comes to protecting endpoints and workloads in the cloud, and their upcoming earnings report is going to be big news.
So what's the scoop? What are we looking at?
Well, analysts are predicting an EPS of, get this, $0.85 for the next quarter.
Okay, $0.85.
And here's the kicker, that's actually down 8.6% compared to the same time last year.
Down. That's not usually a good sign, is it?
Not always, but hold on. We need to look at the bigger picture.
Right, context is everything. What's going on in the industry as a whole?
Good point. The software industry in general is seeing slower EPS growth right now. So the question is, how does CrowdStrike stack up against its competitors?
Well, they've been exceeding expectations, haven't they?
They have. They've actually beaten EPS estimates in 3 out of the last 4 quarters.
Really?
Yeah, and remember Q2 of 2024, they completely blew past estimates by $0.07.
So this potential dip is kind of a surprise then.
Yeah.
What's driving that, do you think?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah. What's going on behind the scenes at CrowdStrike?
Well, there are a few factors at play. For one, their operating expenses are going up.
Okay, that makes sense. Spending more, cutting into profits.
Right. And then there's the possibility of some customer churn after that IT outage they had earlier this year.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oh.
That was a pretty big deal. Makes you wonder if some customers lost confidence.
And then on top of all that, there's the issue of deferred revenue.
Deferred revenue. So basically, they're not getting paid as quickly as they expected.
Exactly. Which can obviously impact their short-term outlook.
Right. So some potential headwinds for CrowdStrike. But what about the long game? Is the market still optimistic about their future?
Well, despite all those challenges, a lot of analysts still believe in CrowdStrike's long-term growth potential.
Interesting. Why is that?
Their cloud-native platform is a big reason why. It gives them this incredible edge in terms of scalability and agility, which is super important in the fast-paced world of cybersecurity.
It's like they're built to adapt, right?
Exactly. Think of it like this. They're like a speedboat zipping around and responding to threats quickly while their competitors are stuck in these clunky old battleships.
I like that analogy. So it's their ability to adapt and respond quickly that's keeping the market optimistic.
It's a big part of it, yeah. And don't forget their investments in AI and machine learning. That's helping them stay ahead of the curve when it comes to threat detection.
It's all about predicting the next move, right?
Absolutely. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We still need to see how all this translates into actual stock performance, especially when it comes to those earnings surprises.
Right, because we've seen how the market can react to those, haven't we?
We have. It's a roller coaster sometimes.
It is. So remind me, where do things stand right now?
Right now, we're looking at a projected EPS of 85 cents, which, as we said, is lower than both last quarter's EPS of $0.93 and the EPS from the same quarter last year, which was also $0.93.
Okay, so a bit of a dip. And I seem to remember CrowdStrike has been pretty consistent at beating estimates.
They have. They have a 100% track record over the past year. But remember, the industry average for earnings surprises is around 66.89%. So while they've been doing great, there's no guarantee they'll keep up that streak.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this earnings report could really go either way.
It could. It's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
So before we move on, can we just pause for a second? I want to make sure I'm following all of this.
Sure. What's on your mind?
I'm just thinking about all these numbers and projections. There's a lot to take in. I'm curious, what's standing out to you so far? What are your initial thoughts on CrowdStrike's position heading into this earnings release?
That's a great question. Let me think for a second. What about you?
Well, honestly, I'm a little hesitant to make any predictions just yet. I think we need to look at some specific examples of how CrowdStrike has handled these earnings reports in the past. That might give us a better sense of what to expect this time around.
I completely agree. Looking back at those past quarters is a great idea. It can help us see how they've navigated these waters before.
Exactly. So let's do that. Let's rewind the clock a bit and revisit some of those key moments from CrowdStrike's earnings history.
All right, let's take a trip down memory lane and see what we can learn.
Sounds like a plan.
This is going to be good. Stay tuned, everyone. We're just getting started.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit and look at, say, Q2 of 2024.
August, right?
Yep, back in August. They reported an EPS of, wait for it, $1.04.
Wow, $1.04?
That's right, and the estimate was only little 97 cents. So they beat it by a solid $40.
That's a pretty big beat. What drove that, I wonder? New customers.
New customers definitely played a role,
Hmm.
especially in the enterprise sector. They were signing up left and right.
I can see that. Businesses are realizing just how important cybersecurity is these days.
And it wasn't just new customers either. Existing customers were upgrading to those higher tier packages, the ones with all the bells and whistles.
Ah, so they're not just getting new customers, they're getting their existing customers to spend more too. That's a good sign.
It is. It shows that CrowdStrike is building trust and delivering real value.
So Q2 2024 was a big win for them. What about, let's see, Q4 of 2023?
Another strong quarter. They reported EPS of $0.82, beating the estimate of 74 cents.
Another beat, 2 in a row. What fueled that one?
A few things. Holiday sales were strong, as you might expect. And they also rolled out some really cool new features, especially in the cloud security space.
It seems like they're really hitting their stride, wouldn't you say?
They are. But remember, it's not always a perfect upward trajectory.
True, true. There are always bumps in the road.
And CrowdStrike had one in Q1 of 2024.
Oh yeah, June of this year.
They reported an EPS of $0.20, which was just slightly below the estimate of 21 cents.
So a miss, but a very small one.
Right, a minor miss. And the main reason for that was higher operating expenses than they had anticipated, particularly in research and development.
Makes sense. They're investing heavily in innovation.
Exactly. They're pouring money into R&D to stay ahead of the curve in this constantly evolving landscape.
It's like an arms race, isn't it? You always have to be one step ahead of the bad guys.
And that's not cheap, but it's necessary.
Absolutely. So Q1 2024 was a bit of a blip, but overall their track record is pretty impressive.
It is. They've shown they can deliver even when faced with challenges.
Speaking of challenges, let's talk about how the market reacts to those earnings surprises. We've seen how a beat can send the stock soaring, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Remember, after their Q2 2024 earnings beat, their stock jumped over 8% in just a week.
Wow, that's a big jump. Clearly, investors were happy with that performance.
They were. It gave them confidence that CrowdStrike was on the right track.
But what about when they miss? What happens then?
Well, the market doesn't like surprises, especially not negative ones.
Nope, investors can be pretty skittish.
They can. Back in Q1 of 2024, after that small miss, their stock price dipped about 5% the next day.
5%? That's not insignificant.
It's not. It shows you how quickly sentiment can change.
It's a reminder that earnings reports are a big deal. They can really move the market.
No doubt about it. Every little detail is scrutinized.
It's all about managing expectations and delivering results.
Exactly. And for growth companies like CrowdStrike, those expectations are always high.
You said it. Now, before we jump into the competitive landscape, I just want to take a moment to bring it back to our listeners.
Oh, good idea.
I'm curious, what are your takeaways so far? What's resonating with you about CrowdStrike's journey? What questions are popping up for you?
It's interesting to see how CrowdStrike is balancing these short-term challenges with their long-term goals. It's like they're playing a delicate game, trying to keep investors happy while also making the right moves for the future.
Absolutely. It's a constant balancing act.
It is. And I think it'll be fascinating to see how they navigate that moving forward.
Me too. Now, let's dive into that competitive landscape and see how CrowdStrike stacks up against the rest of the cybersecurity world.
All right, let's do it. Let's see who they're up against and what strategies they're using to stay ahead of the pack.
Buckle up, everyone. This is where things get really interesting. So we've talked about CrowdStrike's financials, we've looked at their earnings track record, but now I want to dive into what really sets them apart in the cybersecurity world.
Yeah, it's a crowded market out there.
It is. So what makes CrowdStrike stand out from the crowd?
Well, I think their biggest advantage is their cloud-first approach.
Cloud first. Okay, so can you unpack that a bit? What does that actually mean in the context of cybersecurity?
Sure. So, like traditional security solutions, right? They were built for these on-premise IT environments where everything was kind of locked down in a company's own data center.
Okay, yeah, like building a fortress around your data.
Exactly. But as more and more businesses have moved their operations to the cloud, that old way of doing things just doesn't cut it anymore.
Because you can't exactly build a wall around the cloud, can you?
Nope. The cloud is this vast, ever-expanding space. You need a different kind of security strategy, something more flexible, more agile.
So how does CrowdStrike's cloud-native platform fit into all of this?
Well, their platform was built from the ground up to operate in the cloud. So it can scale really easily to handle all the data that modern businesses generate.
So they're not stuck with those old, clunky systems that can't keep up.
Exactly. They're built for speed and agility, which is crucial in the cybersecurity world.
It's like they're a speedboat zipping through the cloud while their competitors are stuck in these old, slow-moving tankers.
That's a great way to put it. And on top of that, they've really embraced AI and machine learning to enhance their threat detection capabilities.
Yeah, we touched on their AI engine before, but I'm curious, how does it actually work? What kind of data is it analyzing?
Well, it's constantly ingesting data from millions of endpoints and workloads across their entire customer base.
Wow, millions.
Millions. And it's looking for patterns, anomalies, anything that might suggest malicious activity.
So, like unusual login attempts, suspicious file downloads, things like that.
Exactly. It's like having a digital detective constantly monitoring your systems looking for clues.
And the beauty of AI is that it learns over time, right?
Yeah,
The more data it analyzes, the better it gets at spotting those threats.
exactly. It's constantly evolving and adapting to the latest threats.
That's pretty amazing. But I imagine you still need human expertise, right? AI can't do it all.
You're right. CrowdStrike has a whole team of security experts who work alongside their AI engine, providing that human touch.
So it's a powerful combination of human and artificial intelligence.
It is. And they're constantly innovating, expanding their product portfolio, partnering with other companies, all to stay ahead of the curve.
It sounds like they're really shaping the future of cybersecurity.
I think they are. They have a
Yeah.
vision and they're executing it.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into CrowdStrike, we've explored their financial performance, their technology, their strategic vision. It's been a pretty wild ride.
It has. And we've seen how they're using the cloud, AI, and human expertise to tackle the ever-changing world of cybersecurity.
We've also learned that while they face challenges, their long-term prospects look really strong.
They do. And as you continue to follow CrowdStrike's story, think about how they might continue to push the boundaries of cybersecurity and what that means for the future of protecting businesses in this digital age.
That's a great thought to leave our listeners with. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of CrowdStrike.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe out there in the digital world.